Back to you, Omar Aliyu. What we've seen now is a bit of confusion now concerning movement of persons. For most Nigerians, this happens to be an interesting moment in their lives, election-wise. While for those who are Christians, this is something that can't and shouldn't, must not be toyed with. Talking about Palm Sunday, they must be in church, and it is very significant to Christianity, so they must understand all of that. So in the mix of all of this confusion, no one has said anything concerning movement of persons. But from the tweet we're getting from someone who's been caught up in Ojota here in Lagos, he said, well, I've been asked to go back by soldiers on the street. In a situation like this, what do you think the authorities can do to quickly correct this?
We need to do very swift information management here. I saw this coming. And we're having this probably because there were lapses in what we can call the contingencies on ground. Probably nobody did a what if it spills into day 2, day 3, day 4. But having done that, having said that, I think there should be some form of communication, and there should be some form of modification in the arrangements made on the part of the security agencies to reach the security and the law enforcement operatives out there, so we don't end up having triggers. We are in a very sensitive period nationally, both politically and religiously. And you see, unrest doesn't have a coloration.
So we cannot take the fact that things went smoothly, largely, because there were pockets of violence here and there, nothing too big, but we cannot take the fact that it went largely peaceful yesterday for granted, can we?
No, we can't take things for granted. Yesterday is done with. Kudos to those who did something about it. We're in the now. In the now of it, people want to go and worship. Religion can be a very sensitive thing. So let's not create triggers that can be exploited and eventually escalate to affect even the transition we are trying to successfully close.
But you know that INEC did envisage that the voting could go into day 2. When the question of the card reader came up and the fact that it was taking a lot more time to accredit, people had asked INEC this question, that definitely it would seem that the process is going to take much longer because of the card reader and the introduction of the card readers. And INEC had said, well, if it means that we have to do voting into the next day, we are prepared for that. So it's like they saw it coming. But did they also take into cognizance perhaps the significance of the day being a week to Easter?
No, you see, for INEC, I wouldn't say the challenge was with INEC. If the INEC chairman sits down and says voting is going to continue into the next day, that's a tall order for the security agencies. Somebody there should be able to start decoding. Somebody there should be able to start fixing or rearranging his plans to drive the successes of what the INEC man is already saying will happen. So you are looking at some kind of, do I call it, we now say we are looking at some kind of anticipation. So if you suddenly told me you were my principal, that you were going to Abuja today, I know the roads are down, probably only the airports are open. So as your security custodian, I'm going to Abuja is a sentence, but for me it's a tall order. A lot of things have to start being readjusted.
So what will we be asking the INEC, beg your pardon, the security agencies to be doing at this time? First of all, we're not quite sure in how many areas polling did not go on yesterday. And so perhaps they're trying to ensure that people are still as orderly as they were yesterday. But at the same time, people need to go to church. People must move today. For the people who live hand to mouth, they most likely want to go to the market to get something to buy. You know, all of this will come in. What would you be asking the security agencies to do?
For now, communication management is key. INEC and the military should be able to communicate swiftly. And for the military and the security agencies too, communication management is key for the troop commanders and their superior commanders and the foot soldier. But then if you look at it again, basically for the military, what are they doing? They're actually ensuring that movement is monitored. Yesterday there was no movement at all. Today we're seeing a partial mix of no movement and some movement because people want to go to church. So there are certain things they will now zero in on. What should we be looking out for? What should we be actually vigilant about?
That shouldn't involve, turning them back.
Well, we need,
of movement.
yeah, we need not turn them back to go home. Since the situation has called for people to go and worship, I mean, it's Palm Sunday, and that's a good thing. We can manage it. Managing it simply means modifying, or do I say adapting, the security measures to that extra change. So we really need to have what you can call a robust but flexible plan. It need not be rigid, because basically people who are going to go to church will need to use the roads. And since the military are on the roads, they can co-opt the extra duty of looking out for those little windows bad guys will want to exploit in the guise of also going to church.
That's absolutely important. Very quickly, let me welcome Dr. Fasa Yusuf, he's a communication consultant. Thanks for joining us, and good morning.
Good morning.
We'll get back to you, but for now, with all of those questions you have raised, I'm quite sure INEC is already listening. And again, looking at the military's action around Ojota axis, one of the questions we can also key into all of that is, there are places around that axis where elections were inconclusive yesterday. That's another big question. But again, Kayode, who is the spokesperson to Atairu Jega, Professor Atairu Jega, should be with us on Skype. And he joins us via Skype in Abuja. Good morning, Mr. Idowu. Quite a day. Yes, I know the plate is full for INEC, but Nigerians expect to see pretty much more than what we saw yesterday. Going forward, elections continue in places where were inconclusive. The question about movement of persons, vehicular movement as well, is causing a bit of confusion in the country. What can you tell us about that? Is there any restriction of movement of persons?
Thank you so much for being on your program this morning. The restriction of movement is not within the remit of INEC. It was imposed by security agencies. But my understanding, and I hope I'm right, my understanding is that the restriction was meant to be between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. yesterday. I have not had another announcement, and so I will be careful to hazard a guess that there's another restriction today. In any event, these elections we are talking about is in very restricted and isolated places. I also want to correct a terminology. Inconclusive elections. There were no inconclusive elections. There were places where elections did not hold at all yesterday, and as I speak now, I recall precisely two states, Niger State, Jigawa State. I'm not too sure there is such a place in Lagos where elections did not take place at all. So these are the places where elections have to be conducted today. And so the issue of a general restriction across the country is really not to me, it doesn't seem to be necessary.
Well, Kayode, that brings us to the next question. People are a little curious as to whether or not INEC has been able to successfully map out those areas where elections did not take place. Because if you ask some Lagosians, they will tell you that in some areas, INEC officials did not show up at all. Unless, of course, those polling units were cancelled and nobody knew anything about it.
Well, I would love to have information on the specific polling units where officials did not show up. And yeah, one could get further details about them. But like I said, there are a number of places where elections did start late yesterday. And by the rules, once the accreditation started late, and once the accreditation started, the process had to be concluded. I do not have specific information about a polling unit in Lagos as I speak. But if there are places that anyone knows of, if I know of it, I can interrogate with the resident electoral commissioner. Otherwise,
But that's
I do
going
not
to be
have-
an issue, definitely, Mr. Idowu, because if you say that you do not know, if you don't have that information, then the question is, has INEC been able to sit and say, we now have information as to those areas where polling did not take place and will take place today for the elections to go on there?
I just told you that that is happening in Niger and Taraba states.
I think you said Jigawa.
No,
it
Niger
Jigawa or
and
Taraba?
Taraba. Jigawa is a different thing. Jigawa is a constituency election that did not hold at all and has been rescheduled for April 11. And on the clip that you just played, the chairman made it clear the House of Reps constituency election in Jigawa State has been rescheduled to April 11th. So that is not the kind of elections we are talking about here. We are talking about the presidential, senatorial, and House of Reps elections in other places where there were no challenges. Before INEC took the decision that where they had challenges with the cadre that they could revert to manual. Before that, polling officials had advised people to go and come back today. In such places, they had gone, and so there was no way they could continue with that election yesterday. That is why they have to come back today.